I brought all of the receipts. I'm honestly not quite sure where to start it, but we're gonna figure it out. When I turned 18, I was already not living with my parents anymore. And so I needed a car because I lived in the middle of nowhere and I needed to get around. My mom was buying a new car at the time, so she sold me her old one for a very little sum. Now, her old car was not the nicest, but maybe the perfect car for somebody to learn driving. It was a Ford Fusion, or as the Germans say, it was a Ford Fusion, and it was an absolute piece of shit. Sorry if you're driving a Ford Fusion, but this car was hell. In Germany and many places on the Autobahn, there's no speed limit, and this car would not go faster than 120. And if you did, it was incredibly loud and it was incredibly wind sensitive. So it was really annoying to drive, but it was good enough for like learning the ropes and like getting around, which is what I needed it for. So I didn't mind it much. It's getting complicated here. My step-grandfather has a friend who sold his car. Well, he tried to put his car in like the what is that called? Like a metal press. He tried to get his car into a metal press. Like, it was done. He said he doesn't want to fix it anymore. He's so annoyed. He bought a new one already and he gave it to my step-grandfather to, I believe, bring it there. And I was visiting my dad and my step-grandparents because they lived next to each other. And I saw the car and I was like, that's a beautiful car. Where is that from? You know, do you still need it? They said, no, it's going in the trash. Like, do not bother with that one. Too much trouble, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, before you send it into the metal press, give it to me. I'll take care of it. I'll fix it up. It'll be fine. And so that's how I got my first nice car, which was a BMW 5er. And in Germany, it's actually not BMW, it's BMW. So now you know. Touring version, I forgot the English word, but do you know when they're bigger in the back? Yeah, that. That was my second car, and it had a few issues, one of them being that the music didn't really play. Like when you tried to turn on the radio, it would just like phase in and out. And I went into a Facebook group and I typed in that problem, and it was like one cable that I had to pull like in the trunk, so I did that and it worked and it was fixed. And over the time it had some more issues, but nothing out of the ordinary, I would say. I think the wildest thing that happened to me is one time when I was driving, there was like a fly in my car and I tried to get it out through the back window because it was behind me, and I put the back window down and it wouldn't come back up. And it started raining, and I called friends and they helped me and they pulled it back up. That was, I think, the weirdest thing that happened with it. Now, that car would always drive. Like, I never had issues with it that wouldn't allow me to drive anywhere. My family lived 600 kilometers away. That's a long ass drive. And I needed a car that was reliant, that would get me from A to B without much trouble and with some type of comfort, because I don't want to drive 6 hours in like a fucking Ford Ka or whatever. That car had the motor engine light up eventually. Now, nobody could tell me why. Brought it to a couple of places. I was like, you know, it's not going away. We don't really know what it is. And the mechanics would tell me, well, we need to kind of like take it out and do like error searching. I was kind of broke back then. So I was like, it's still driving, no? Why do we care about that engine light? The car is fine, it doesn't drive weird, feels okay, we'll just pretend it isn't on. And that was fine until my TÜV ran out, which if you're not German, you probably don't know what TÜV is. It's something all cars need to get every 2 years, unless it's a very new car, then it's every 3 years, which basically tests like your security functions of the car. So they take it, they test if all of the wheels are still in like the angles that they should be. They test if you're putting too much CO2 into the air. They test if your lights are working, if your brakes are working. Like any kind of issues that a car could have that could impact the functions of security on it, they test. A motor engine light is one of those functions. And my TÜV ran out, and I was like, well, you know, I don't really want to fix it, and I also can't afford to fix it, and I won't get new TÜV. So I drove it a little bit longer until eventually I was like, okay, it's done. I can't do anything here anymore. I'm going to get like a fine if they catch me driving around without TÜV, and I need a new car. I do not come from a family where people are good with cars. I feel like I kind of need to put that out there. My parents are pastors. They do not know jack shit about cars. And so I didn't really have anybody to help me with except for like a couple of acquaintances. And I asked them. I've always loved BMW, so for me, I was like, if I'm paying a lot of money for a car, I want a BMW again, which is what I was looking for. Now, back then, couldn't really afford too much, so I was looking for cars around the range of like 6 to 8K, which is already a lot of money for a student. I mean, I was working, but still, it was a lot of money. I looked for that online, and I looked up lots of cars. I had a couple of things that I definitely wanted, which is like cruise control, I wanted seat heating, and I really wanted a display because I drive long hours and long distance, and I wanted a display to have like my nav set set up. And that's not something that many cars had back then. And I looked all across Germany and I found one. It was a white BMW 3 Series E90. That car was 7,500 euro, which was a shitload for me. And we drove across Germany to get it. So I lived in the west, northwest, and I drove all the way to the other side, like the far east of the country, to buy it, which was like I want to say like a 6-hour drive. We checked it out. I took this guy with me to make sure that somebody was looking at it that knew something about cars, because I sure as hell didn't. It was a private seller. It was a nice old grandpa who told me that his wife had been driving this car, and I was like, oh, surely, you know, nothing can be wrong with that. They gave me a second set of tires with it, and it looked beautiful. It was like deep cleaned, it was like polished, everything was nice, it smelled new, it was under covers, it was like well taken care of, and I had a really good feeling. So I was like, okay, let's get it. I took like a test drive and I bought it, and I brought it back home, and it didn't have a display. So I was like, oh, I don't know, you know, I really wanted a display, a little bougie. And my friend actually suggested to buy one off the internet and put it in a dashboard. We could connect it and it would have like Google Maps and so on. It's basically like an Android tablet. After like a couple of weeks of driving, I was actually on my way to IKEA, and suddenly I heard like a loud bang while I was like rolling up to a light. And I wasn't alone in the car, a friend was with me, and we both kind of like looked what that was, and we figured it was just like a drink pack that I must have rolled over and it like exploded. So we didn't worry too much. We like checked the car out as soon as we stopped it, and there was nothing that we could see. So I was like, okay, bad, probably nothing bad. And then the car wanted service, like I think it was motor oil or something. So I brought it to a mechanic. Man, we looked at this car. Do you know that your fucking spring? So my coil spring was broken, is what Google is telling me. They sent me a picture. They were like, ma'am, we've never seen something like this. What the fuck did you do with this car? I'm like, I really didn't do anything. I just bought this. So they were like, yeah, that's bad. You have to fix it. And you also have to get new shock absorbers. Google is helping me a lot today. So I had to buy new springs for all of the 4 and new shock absorbers, so it would all work again, because you cannot just exchange one, you have to exchange multiple. But I had to get all of that new and it was quite expensive. It was like 800 euro. Okay, I guess beginner's luck, right? I was driving the car some more. I was like late night McDonald's run, you know, and suddenly my brakes felt weird. And I was like, it's not braking right. And I had to like use the engine to like help brake it. And I was like, okay, this is not good. I drove it to the mechanic once again and I was like, please check out my brakes, something is wrong. They were like, oh yeah, your brake line is broken. That's what they said, it busted. And I was like, what the? Huh? So I had to fix that. That was also expensive, I don't remember. Maybe it's here. No, it's not here, I don't know. So I got that fixed, which was also like, I don't know, 300 euro. And then one of my headlights broke and I had to get that exchanged, which is this one, which was 260 euro. And then after that, several issues where it was rusted, so they fixed that up, which was also 400 euro. Then after that, my NOx sensor broke, which also would give me a motor engine failure light, or like the motor engine control lit up. I had to bring it back in, which is this one, which was 700 euro. It became a giant meme because my car was more often with the mechanic than it was with me. But I didn't want to give it up and I also didn't have the money to just buy something else. So I kept kind of like putting money into that one while I was paying off the loan I took to buy it in the first place, which was really annoying. I drove to see my family, which again is like a 6-hour drive. And when I arrived there, I was like, my car felt really wrong. I was driving on like snowy roads. It was winter. German winters do get kind of icy and snowy. And I was like, something is not right here. And I brought it to a mechanic that I trusted back in my hometown, and he said, Miss ma'am, do you know what you've been driving around with? And he said that all of my wheels were basically like slanted in ways that they shouldn't be. So normally, if you know anything about car wheels and angles, it's like they should be like this, like slightly like this, so that when you go into curves, it's like it has better traction or some shit like that. Correct me if I'm wrong. Subscribe while you're at it. And Ari. So your cars normally are like this, and mine were like this. It was really bad. Like it would go like, yeah, not good. Also not TÜV approved, by the way. And I was like, okay, how much is that to fix? And they were like, like 800 euro at least. And I was like, before that, I was checking out cars because I was like, I've been putting so much money into this one and it's just not worth it. I had done service. I now had owned the car for like 2,5 years.
Ari, ich versuch zu reden. Verdammt nochmal.
Ari, bist du auch sauer, weil ich so viel Geld für mein Auto ausgegeben habe? Okay. When I finally decided to take it in for those slanted wheels, after driving around with it for some more time, as long as it was possible, they were like, okay, 4 days, and then you're gonna have it back and we'll fix it. And then the mechanic called me, which I can assure you, if a mechanic is calling you, that's never a good sign. They always call to tell you something is fucked up. So they called me and they're like, we cannot let you drive out of our parking lot the way that this car is. What the fuck are you on about? They were like, can we send you a picture perhaps? And I was like, you know, it was all coming back to me from when the springs broke, and they were like, your rear axle, like the back axle of the car, is dead. There is no coming back to this one. It's completely rusted. Something is very wrong with this car. Either somebody lied to you when you bought it, or I don't know what they were doing with it, but if we hadn't seen this, it probably would have ripped off. And I was like, haha, fun, interesting, cool, thanks for telling me. I paid for the fix regardless, because I had already decided to fix the wheels, right? I of course had to pay for the rear axle as well, which was also expensive. It was like 2,000 euro, I think. All of these repairs, just like roughly adding them up, I think the car now cost me like twice, a little bit more than twice, like around 20k, what I paid for it in repairs and buying it for the first time as well. That's kind of fucked up. You know, for an old car like that, that's not what you want to be paying. And I was like, okay, I'll just drive it until it falls apart, right? I fixed so many things on it already. Surely what else can go wrong? Oh boy, was I wrong. When I was driving my car, it it had like a hiccup. I was like driving, somebody slowed me down, and it had like a hiccup, and my engine light blinked up, and I was like, I know what that means. That's not good. When it blinks, it's never good, guys. Drove to the side, I turned the car off, I turned it back on, you know, being the nerd that I am, that's the first thing you gotta try. Maybe a reset, and it worked fine. So I was like, okay, surely it's just a one-time hiccup, right? Definitely nothing wrong with this car, until it happened again like 2 months later. And I was like, fuck, something's wrong. It got worse and worse, so while I was driving I could tell that it wasn't receiving as much gas anymore, and something was definitely fucked with it. So I decided to not take the car down to South Germany where my parents live. Into the mechanic it goes once again, because that's where it feels home apparently. And they were like, yeah, you know, we can't really tell, you have to bring it to BMW themselves. That's already bad news, I know that. Brought it to BMW, they told me that the injectors are broken. And if one injector breaks, well, two are broken, and they're like, if we have to replace one, we usually replace all of them because they will fail sooner or later. It's just like a sign of old age on a car, which this car isn't as old. I was like, okay, that's it. That's the last straw. I'm not dealing with this bullshit anymore. That's when I decided that I'm gonna sell my car. So right now, my car is being sold. Don't worry, I was very open and honest to the guy that wants to buy it. It's still a beautiful car. I was like, I am going to tell you what you are buying here. This is everything I already did with the car. This is my suspicion. Do you still want it? And he was like, yeah, I want it. So I tried my best to save him, you guys. It's a mechanic, so my hopes is that he can fix a lot of the stuff that is broken himself. So maybe he has more luck with the car than I did. I personally think they fucking scammed me all the way. Probably the car itself is as old as they've been saying, but I think they put old parts in. So I think they like took it apart, they sold off valuable pieces, and then they put in old shitty ones. That's my suspicion, but of course I have no way to prove this, and I also can't like prove it anyhow. Like, it's useless. So right now I don't have a car. I'm a little bit in a pinch where I have to figure out how to get around with stuff. But I decided to do something nice. I bought a new car, and I'm going to do a video on my new car once it comes, because I don't want to spoil the surprise, but let's just hope and pray with me that the new car is going to be better than the old one, and the curse has been broken, because man oh man, have I suffered with this fucking car. Take this as a lesson. If you are buying from a private seller and you're buying a car, do your homework, get a gutachter, get somebody that checks it out, does like a full list on what's wrong and how the pieces are looking. Do learn from my mistakes, please. It can save you a lot of money.